computer. Recording, and we are up. Yay!
We did it. Well, Yay. You did. I didn't do anything. I just sat here.
But you know what? That's okay. Let me see if I can bring this up to full screen. View full screen. There we go. Yay!
Yay!
So hello, Stephanie.
Hello, Tovah.
So let me get my introduction stuff out of the way, and then we will get started on our interview.
Okay.
So welcome, guests, to Get In, We're Going Healing. And welcome to Self-Improvement Sundays. I hope you enjoyed the show so far and that it's helped you to find some space for healing in your life. If you like the show, don't forget to subscribe so you never miss any new content that I put out. If you are watching the video feed, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. You know the drill. This show is all about healing the things that are holding you back from being your best self, your most authentic you, your happiest, healthiest you. So in this show, you'll learn how to heal yourself, because if we're being honest, you're the only one who can do it. No one else can do it for you. So on that note, my guest today is Stephanie Tellier. She is a registered psychotherapist and Canadian certified counselor. She received her Bachelor of Arts in Family and Social Relations from the University of Windsor and her master's degree from Detroit Mercy in Community and Mental Health. She specializes in human sexuality, but is not a sex therapist yet. So welcome, Stephanie.
Hi, thank you so much. I'm glad to be here.
Yay.
Yay.
Yay. And we finally made it.
We finally made it. This is so exciting. And I'm so proud of you. Can I just say, Tovah, I'm so proud of you. Podcast
thank you.
So happy to be a part of this.
I'm so happy you're a part of it. I'm so happy that we're friends. Stephanie and I have been friends for quite some time, a good solid many years. I'm not even sure how many. It's been so many. It's hard to count.
It happens. Yeah, it's been a while, but this is great. And it's nice that we're reconnecting a bit too, because this pandemic has been a little isolating, hasn't it?
Oh, so much. It's been very challenging without being able to hang out with your friends, do your usual stuff. All your coping mechanisms are gone out the window. So, friends and hanging out is awesome.
Yeah, it sure is.
So, well, let's get into our interview. So for our viewers, what is your area of focus?
Well, my area of focus, like you mentioned, is human sexuality. So it's a pretty broad term. And right now I do have a pretty broad focus. I'm working with couples and relationships. I'm working with the LGBTQ plus community. I'm working with consensual non-monogamy, BDSM, and kink. But on top of all that, I'm also doing a wide variety of general mental health issues like depression, anxiety, stress, and my main focus in there is cognitive behavior therapy, so CBT, which is what I think you want to talk to me about today.
I do. You know what? Just a minute. Now that you're saying all this, and I'm realizing, because normally when I record alone and I don't use speakers or headphones. But now as I'm doing this, I can barely hear you on my speakers.
Oh,
so
no.
Fun technical difficulties. We're just going to throw in some headphones.
Hey, that's good. We're going to learn and adapt as we go.
We'll just learn on the fly. It's okay.
Fine.
Hey, I can hear you.
Yay, awesome.
All right. So what kind of people do you treat in your practice?
I do not work with children very often. I love working with teens, actually. Teens are my favorite. And I do work with adults, any adult age. I do individual counseling. I do couples counseling, whatever couples counseling looks like. Again, I'm into diversity. So I do work with polyamorous couples, all different kinds of family forms. And that's about it.
Awesome. So let's get a little more into CBT. What is it and why is it helpful?
Right. So CBT, cognitive behavior therapy. So this is something that we know is very effective for treating a lot of mental health disorders. It's evidence-based practice, and it's looking that something happens in our lives, a situation, and we have a thought about that situation. This might be something we're aware of, or it might be an unconscious thought that we have that we make, and that thought causes an emotional reaction. And that emotional reaction then influences our behaviors. And sometimes this works out fine, sometimes it's a little maladaptive and gets us into some trouble. So CBT looks at getting to those thoughts that we have and being able to reframe that and change it so that we can
Oh, hang on. We lost recording for a second. I lost you on that one for a second. Hang on. Please hold. Technical difficulties.
Oh, here we go. You're back. Okay.
There we go. All right. Could you please repeat that last part? We totally missed it.
Sure. Where did I leave off? I don't know.
Maladaptive thought patterns.
Right. Yeah. So we're looking at these, maladaptive thought patterns where maybe, we're having a hard time interpreting the situation and it's having a really negative impact on us and our behaviors. So we address that thought to modify the emotions to have a more adaptive, healthier outcome in our behaviors.
Okay, so let's talk a little more about that common unhelpful thinking patterns, those maladaptive thinking patterns. What do those look like for those that are maybe not familiar with that term?
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of them. So some of them that are pretty common is, overgeneralizing. So everything's awful, nothing's ever good. We're making these absolute statements, right? And we're not kind of realizing that that's not true, right? It's rare that it's going to be 100% of the time that everything's awful. We might engage in things like jumping to conclusions. So mind reading, right? Oh, I can tell the way you're looking at me, you don't like me. Well, wait a minute, is that necessarily true? Or trying to predict the future where we catastrophize and just imagine that worst case scenario happening. Yeah, it
Guilty of
happens.
that one. Very guilty of that one.
It happens. Oh, a lot of these I'm guilty of too. These are very, very common. Other things like, ignoring the positive, right? So you have a ton of good feedback, but that one negative criticism, and then that's all you focus on, and it's the end of the world. So those are some common ones. Also, just like personalizing, right? So maybe mom and dad are arguing at home, it must be my fault, right? And so you engage in that self blame. So these are kinds of things that are not really helpful for us, and they lead to these destructive behaviors where maybe we close ourselves off or we act out in an inappropriate way towards others.
Yes, I am very familiar with that. So once someone has a pattern of this thinking, what do you do to change the pattern?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm not going to lie, it's not easy. It's hard, and it takes time and it takes some insight. Um, I find writing helps a lot, because it's hard to say, well, when you're having that unconscious thought, try and call it out and think of it, right? Some people can, some people can't. So set a time for yourself, where you can be relaxed and calm, and go over your thinking for your day. What has been stressing you out? Write it down. And when you write it on paper, it can help you process it a little differently to see, oh, wait a minute, I'm engaging in fortune telling right now, or I'm discrediting the positive. How can I change that around? So instead of, mom and dad are arguing, they must hate me. Well, wait a minute, that's an assumption. Mom and dad are arguing. Sometimes adults argue. I haven't done anything wrong. I know they love me. Try and just reframe that thought, and it can help you calm and soothe.
Journaling has been a big one for me. I have found that to be incredibly useful, just even to go back on my thoughts and go, oh, I see what I was doing there. In that moment, I was really definitely catastrophizing things. Now that I'm out of it, I can see that I was stuck in that pattern.
Exactly. I think you use the analogy, being in the car, right? So being on the side of the street versus being in the car, take that step back, watch the cars pass by, observe your thoughts, and analyze it from that different perspective where you're not right in it at that moment.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about the connection between emotions and action.
Right. So this is the big thing. if I'm good at giving examples. Is that okay if I just give
Oh yeah,
examples?
go right ahead. That helps listeners very much.
Fantastic. So let's say you and I were supposed to, call each other last night, right? And you didn't call me. And so maybe my thought is, oh my gosh, um, Tova doesn't like me, right? So that emotion that happens is maybe like some anger, maybe some self-doubt, some self-hate, and all these negative emotions. That's going to lead me to do an action where I'm going to cut myself off. I'm not going to call you. I'm not going to reach out. I'm going to feel really poorly about my decisions. Maybe I'm going to eat a bag of potato chips. That's okay to do sometimes, right? But just these behaviors that I don't really want to engage in, that isn't going to move it forward. So if I can reframe that thought, maybe Tova was busy, suddenly my emotional reaction is a lot lighter. I'm more empathic. Maybe I'm still disappointed, and that's okay. But then I'm more likely to react in a more positive way where I'm going to call you back and see if you're just busy or if maybe you needed some support.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I totally get that. Been there, done that. Problems in my relationship. Now coming up with all these ideas of what he's thinking, what he's doing, what he's thinking about me. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, it's so hard to stop yourself and be like, wait a minute, is this a fact or is this an opinion? Because a lot of times we take our opinions to be the absolute truth, and that's not the case.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Totally been there. So, how does mindfulness fit into all of this?
Mindfulness is wonderful. I love mindfulness because it just lets you stop and think and be aware of what's happening, be aware of your thoughts, be aware of your body. So, as you've already discussed, mindfulness can look like a bunch of different things. One is meditation. So, in mindful meditation, you're just trying to clear your mind. And that's, again, something really hard to do. It's not easy, but it's coming at it from a place of acceptance, right? Your mind
Mm-hmm.
wonder, that's okay. Hey, little negative thought, you're here. I don't want you here. That's okay. I'm gonna see you later, and just push it aside and breathe. Because what's happening if you're feeling, anxious, for example, it's this fight or flight response in your body, and you want to calm down. And so you want to focus on your body and take those deep breaths, lower your heart rate, lower your, oh, what's the word for it? I'm not a doctor. Lower your heart rate, your blood pressure. There we go, right? And if you can get to that calm body, it helps to calm your mind, right? Another way
Mm-hmm.
to use mindfulness is to, again, um, like a grounding technique. If you're feeling some anxiety and you want to calm down, right? Okay, so I love this one. It's great for kids, everyone. What are 5 things I can see, 4 things I can hear, 3 things I can touch, 2 things I can smell, 1 thing I can taste? And it gets a little harder, right? So you might like bite on your finger a little just to see, what does my finger taste like, or smell your armpits, right? It gets a little silly. It distracts, but it brings you to your body, it brings you to your environment, and lets you think a little more clearly and calmly.
I have most definitely used those before. I have found myself on a walk on the phone with my sister as she's reminding me, okay, I can tell you're really worked up. Let's use some of these things. What are 5 things you can see? What are the, and going through those things. Of course, in the moment, I was also catastrophizing. So I I couldn't focus on all the things that I was seeing and thinking and feeling and all the different stuff because I was so caught up in the emotional state. I couldn't. I was just way too much.
That's it. It's so hard, and I'm glad your sister's on the phone with you, right? I tell people, if you're having a hard time, call someone, right? There is someone who is there for you, because it's hard to do it on your own. So if someone can walk through with you, or do it with you, or just even help you, like, okay, breathe in, hold on to it, breathe out, right? Again, lowering your heart rate, lowering your blood pressure. It's helpful.
Mm-hmm. So let's get into solution focused therapy. What is it, and how can you use that in your everyday life?
I love solution focused therapy. So, this is something else I do. It's sort of like the name implies, you're just looking at solutions for the problems. Of course, again, not as easy as it sounds. And it focuses more in the present and the future to create goals that you can achieve to move past what you're currently facing. It doesn't really focus on the past too much, except for, when you're looking at resiliency, right? So sometimes people, everything's going bad, nothing's going well. Oh no, I think I lost you again.
I can still hear you.
Okay, good.
The video feed cut out for a second there, but I can still hear you.
Okay, perfect.
So if we just end up having to do like a little thing over top, I'm good with that as long as I can still hear you.
It works. It works. Yeah. So yeah, we might look at the past just to find exceptions. When was a time that things were going well? Or tell me about how you overcame this before, right? But a lot of it is looking towards the future. What are your perceived barriers? What are your support systems? And we use things like miracle question is big in solution focused therapy. So if you were to go to bed tonight and a fairy came by, a magical little fairy, and waved her little wand, poof, everything is suddenly better tomorrow. But like no one told you that this would happen. How would you know things are different? How would you feel? How would you act? Who would be the first person to notice that something's different? And that can give us clues and insights into, again, the barriers you're facing, the tools that you have, what you want to work towards your goal. Things also like scaling is really important. I think this is good for everyone to do. How am I today on a scale of 1 to 10? Where do I fall? Okay, is today a 5? All right, well, what was yesterday? Was yesterday an 8? Well, what's making today a 5? What's the difference? Let's identify what that problem is. And if I'm a 5 right now, what do I need to be a 6? So it gets you really rationally thinking and looking for solutions and tools to help you out.
I like that. I like that a lot.
It's fun. Yeah, I really like it. It's neat. And there was one more thing too. Oh my goodness, and I'm having a brain fart right now. I don't remember. It'll come back to me later.
It'll come back. Don't worry. Don't worry. It'll pop back in there. And then you go, wait a minute. I remember that thing.
That thing, yes.
So now I want to kind of get a little more personal into this, a little more of your experiences with this. So tell me about a client that you had that touched your heart.
Oh, there's so many. Don't do this to me. It's funny, right? Therapists are seen as these stoic professional people who are there to do a job, but yeah, your clients, they really hit deep sometimes. I am thinking about one client in particular. They just had a really rough go, just a series of bad circumstances that had happened with their career and their family, and they were very just depressed. And they were very apprehensive about therapy, right? They didn't want to do it. They thought therapy was a joke, and someone had suggested it to them, and they were very, very resistant. And we eventually built up this good rapport, and we were talking about all these things that had happened. And then we started getting into some childhood trauma that I was unaware of and that they were unaware of too at the same time. And it was a wonderful, transformative experience for this client where we ended up crying together in a session and just sharing that pain and sharing that space. And over time, it was just so wonderful, right? They were able to identify their resiliences and their strengths and build their support system. And they were just super amazing. And they ended up sending me this very beautiful handwritten card afterwards that I still have. It's been years and I still have it, and I look at it and I tear up thinking about it and what a transformation this person had made and how we were able to work together and figure this out.
So much of the stuff that we deal with is unresolved childhood trauma. And I know that when I bring it up to my partner, there's a lot of, oh, it's always about your childhood. But honestly, it kind of is.
It's so important. Yeah, and that's the thing with solution focus. Like, we don't really get into the childhood stuff, but that's not to say it's not important, right? This is why I also use other techniques, because sometimes there is really, really big hurt there. Even if we tell ourselves, oh, we're fine with it, we might not be, and it might still really shape our core values and our perception of the world.
Right. I know that led me to changing my parenting style with my son, because I realized that not necessarily that, well, maybe a little bit, that I was creating traumas in him, but he's still young enough that he's resilient enough that it doesn't stick. But I knew that there was a lot of my own childhood stuff that like really, the voice in my head, the voice in
Yeah.
your head that tells you, oh, well, see, you didn't do that right. You should have tried harder. You should have done better. And then,
Right.
then you start feeling guilty, and you start feeling, no matter how good you did, you always think I could have done better, because that voice is in your head saying you could have done better.
And it's so much pressure. Like we torture ourselves over that, don't we? Yeah, and it comes off too, even if the kids are little, they know, mommy's frustrated or mommy's upset, and they don't quite understand the reason why. And it's, that's a nice thing too, right? If you're ever beating yourself up, flip it around. If my child just did the same thing, how would I treat them? Usually it's with a lot more love and compassion and understanding and motivation and encouragement. We deserve that too, not just the kids.
I completely agree. When I was doing my therapy, my therapist would always recommend, like, take a minute to just acknowledge how far you've come. Even if today you don't feel like you're really progressing that much, just take a minute to acknowledge how far you've actually come and all the things you've actually done, and just sit there for a minute and give yourself a pat on the back that you've actually done this and you've gotten this far, you've achieved these things, and you've let go of these things. And instead of just, oh, I feel like I'm stuck here today, just take a minute and say, hey, you did good. Like it's not perfect, but perfection is not what we're aiming for. We're aiming for growth.
Exactly. Your therapist sounds amazing, by the way. The more you
She's
talk about them, I'm like,
honestly, I love her. I love her. She's she was so helpful, and she was recommended me by a friend who I know is also a very like mindful kind of person, and she just said, I think you're going to be a fit, and she was a perfect fit, like a perfect fit.
That's so good. And you know what? On that note, I'm glad you said that. Like you're paying good money for your therapist. It should be a good fit. It's okay to shop around, right? I think a lot of people, they have a therapy experience and maybe the first time it's not so great, and then they just give up or they feel stuck with that therapist, right? Shop around for whatever reason. If you're not feeling it, if you're not vibing with your therapist, it's okay, and talk to your therapist about it. They'll be more than happy to refer you to someone else. We get it. It's not personal.
I know I had trouble. I did therapy briefly with my first husband. I was previously married, and with my first husband, we went to, I think, one therapy session. But my unresolved trauma was creating so many problems in my relationship. He had unresolved trauma as well that he needed to address, and neither of us were in a position to actually address any of it. And when I went to therapy, the therapist had kind of gone on and said, well, your partner is trying to tell you that you're doing this, and this wrong, which was incredibly unhelpful in the
Mm-hmm.
moment, because I was already feeling that I was being heavily criticized and not accepted. And then to add in, this is what you're doing wrong, and this is what he needs you to do, was incredibly unhelpful and turned me off of therapy for a long time.
Yeah, I believe it. And that happens, right? And I don't know who this therapist was. I don't want to say that they were a bad therapist or anything, but some do come off a little stronger than others. And some people like that, right? Other people, it's not going to work. So just be honest with yourself, be honest with your therapist, and make your money work for you. Mental health is important, and it's not covered, it's not cheap, which is a whole other conversation.
So tell me about a client who changed the way that you practice.
Oh, hmm. I don't really know, to be honest. But I can definitely say there's been some clients who've made me more aware um, of things outside myself. So I am a middle class cis woman. Um, I'm white, and I work with a diversity of clients, and we don't really learn a lot about diversity in school. It's usually a footnote or a small chapter in a book about cultural diversity or religious diversity, sexual diversity, and it's been great working with the communities I do, because I learn from my clients as well. It's a learning experience for me, because someone telling me their story is so much more valuable than reading about a generalization in a book. So that's definitely brought other things to my awareness that I'd never thought of before until I encountered it. And it's making me more mindful towards others now to maybe think and explore different things I wouldn't have before.
Yep. I can totally understand that. I know myself, I used to hold some pretty, let's call them uncomfortable preconceptions about people. And then as I've grown as a person, as I've met people from different diversities, different sexual orientations, different, like the more trans people I meet, the more comfortable I become with that, because of outdated thinking and outdated training from family members and religion and things like that, that as I'm becoming more open, I'm realizing, wow, boy, was I ever stunted in the way that I used to think, like embarrassingly stunted.
Yeah, and it is really embarrassing. It's kind of icky feeling, and it's I think that like, oh gosh, that icky feeling is good though, because that shows again growth, right? And our socio-political climates are changing slowly, but they're changing, and we're starting to have these more realizations and acceptance and appreciation of diversity. And it's good, right? The big thing is just listen. We are not the expert of someone else's life. They are, and that's where we're going to learn from the experts.
Definitely, definitely. So, what is one thing in your treatments that you did for a client that you didn't expect was going to happen?
You're asking me some tough questions. Oh
I'm
my goodness.
going to make you think today. It's not
You're
going
gonna
to.
make me think, yeah. One thing that I say the question again.
What is one thing in your treatments that you did for a client that you didn't expect was going to happen?
It's one thing I did. I didn't expect was gonna happen. I really don't know. I have to think maybe briefly there was a time where I worked with children, and that's just it's not my strong suit. It's not my preference, right? Children, um, they don't have the same obviously cognition that adults do, so you have to interact with them very very differently. So I ended up under supervision engaging in some play therapy, which I had never done before. That was very interesting. So I'm sitting on the floor, we're playing games, we're having snacks and juice together, we're engaging in putting lotions on our hand to help soothe and build like a connection through touch just on the hands, right? And that was something that was all very new and different to me, and not being able to say, well, hello little child, tell me what's on your mind, right? So that was all
If
very
you ask my son, you'll get like a story that lasts 10 minutes and goes off on like a million different tangents. And you're like, okay, can you land the plane? Like bring it back.
yeah, circle back. Yeah, well, I mean, it was definitely something. Yeah, it tried my patience. I'll be honest, right? The people who work with children are amazing. There is a lot of patience involved there, and a lot of creativity and a lot of fun. I have the fun part, but the patience not so much.
It's funny you talk about the touch because one of these books, I'm trying to remember which one it was because I read so many books and I'm like midway through like about 7 different books. It depends on what my mood is that day. So I may like jump to a different book when I'm like, it's a little too heavy today. I'm going to leave that one alone. I'm going to go over to this one. And I think it might be How to Raise Your Spirited Child. I think
Mm.
it's that one. And there's one thing that they recommend for helping your child calm down, and they call it dress up, like make believe dress up, where it's touching. So pretending to put on rings on fingers and gloves on hands and putting the sleeves, arms in the sleeves and pants on, and you're just touching their body as you're describing what you're doing to bring their awareness into their body rather than into all of the chaotic thoughts going on. With spirited children, they're very energetic and
Yeah.
like a lot of intensity with my child, like very very intense child.
Mhm.
So like sometimes you're just like, okay, your intensity is up here, I need it to be like down here.
Mhm.
So
Yep.
like the touch therapy, or like even just being a massage therapist, I found just massaging my child and like putting lotion on him.
Yeah. Touch therapy is amazing. I mean, that's not something that.
Oh, I lost your we lost Steph. It's okay, she'll come back. What? Do 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 boo, do 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 do.
We
There
do
we
have.
are.
Oh
I lost
no!
you. I lost you for a second.
Oh yay, technology!
It's wonderful when it works, not so much when it doesn't.
Yeah, well, this is how we're living now, right? We just roll with the punches, and it is what it is.
So you were saying touch therapy.
Yeah, touch therapy. It's not something I do. It's not something I'm trained to do. But I do find it very, very interesting because touch does have a huge healing capacity, and there are some therapists who do like somatic, body work and touch and healing. And it's, again, it has to depend. Is that your thing? Is that what you're into? Are you with a trusted and qualified professional? Because it is a bit of a gray area, right? I can't be touchy feely with my clients. That's inappropriate,
Right. And that's where massage therapists come in. We've always joked in our industry that we're not just massage therapists, that we're therapists. Because once people are on the table, they'll open up, they'll share stuff with you that they might not have ever told anyone before. And just in like you're touching as you're releasing, you'll feel my favorite moment when clients are on the table with you're massaging them, they come in and they're all tense and they're all like, let's go. And you're like, okay, whoa, settle down a bit. You'll get into the treatment, and then all of a sudden you'll hear and like everything lets go. It was always my favorite moment.
Yeah, it's powerful, like healing through hands. It's definitely a thing, right? I can see the restorative and the healing work that you did as a massage therapist. It's super important.
I loved it. Darn you, pandemic took that away from me.
Right, yeah.
So let me ask you, what is the most important thing that you've learned in your practice that you relate to in your life?
Actually, just how to listen. People, I don't think we know how to listen, especially, we all have our smartphones. So I'm going to talk to you, but I'm going to be on Facebook at the same time, or hang on 1 second, I got a text, or maybe I'm listening to respond. Oh, you're telling me a story about like your friend. Well, let me tell you about my crazy friend, so becoming a therapist and working with people.
Problem area for me.
Well, you know what? That's the thing, though, too. You and I are such high energy. I don't think it comes from a bad place from either one of us. We're just excited and want to share in the fun, But it can be upsetting for some people because you're not getting it. You're not really hearing. It's so yeah. Being able to sit and listen, and for me, honestly, it was challenging to be able to offer so much empathy and validation for a stranger when I struggled offering that stuff to myself. You know. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's, I think it's improved my relationship with people I'm close with, I think, and it's also improved my relationship with myself to be able to turn that back towards me. And again, kind of get into that mindfulness, recognize my resilience and my strength and what I've done good,
Definitely. So if you could have a billboard with anything on it, what would it be and why?
Oh, like anything like related to therapy?
Well, let's keep it to therapy for now. Let's keep it related to a little bit of this talk for now.
I mean, okay, in a perfect world, right? Because of course there's a lot of regulations around that. I can't just be like, hey, I'm the best therapist, come see me.
Oh, we lost you again. Darn technology. It's okay. Steph will come back.
Others know.
There we are. Sorry, we lost
Oh
you again.
Oh gosh, I wonder if
Okay,
there's
so
on my end.
well, I have been getting a notification that it says your bandwidth is low.
Oh, my partner's working from home right now. We're both working from home, so
That'd be why. I do my stuff when nobody else is home, so nobody uses my internet.
oh, I'm so sorry about this. Oh my
That's
goodness.
okay. It happens. I know. So, billboard, what would you put on a billboard if you didn't have restrictions? You didn't have anything you had to limit?
Right, exactly. No restrictions. It would definitely be something sexual, and let me explain that a little differently. So not that I would be sexual, but just something a little outrageous, a little out there, saying this is a safe space. Anything goes. I am your ally. I'm here to listen. BDSM, okay. Kink, okay. Consensual non-monogamy, okay. Whatever you want, like, come here, I got your back. So can't legally do that, but that would be
No,
my.
but I like that. I like that very much. There's so much stigma around that stuff. So much stigma, particularly I know that the call it millennials, I guess, if I want to, I'm not even sure how to categorize it, but let's say millennials, the younger generations, so younger than me, let's go with that, are getting to be much more comfortable with the idea of consensual non-monogamy, where you don't have to be seen just as one partner, and that it's not taboo, let's say, to have more than one partner.
Yeah, and you know what? I am seeing that honestly with some youth today, where they tell me they're in a triad, for example. And I think, hey, is it safe? Is it consensual? How is your communication? Like, if no one is being harmed by this, why not take that chance and experiment if you feel safe, right? Because maybe this is right for you, and maybe it's not, and then that's a valuable learning experience for you along the way.
Right. I know a few people who have had threesomes, I guess, for better lack of term. I'm not even sure there. I'm sure there's a more professional, acceptable term than that, but that's what I got.
Threesome is
So
fine.
people who have been in threesomes and they didn't necessarily want to be in them. They were
Mhm.
pressured to be in them, and it left a really bad taste in their mouth. No
Yeah.
pun intended,
Uh,
but left a really bad experience for them, and just left them thinking, I don't ever want to go into that again, because I felt like I was forced into it when I wasn't really, even though I consented, I didn't
mhm.
really feel like I was consenting. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's a really awful place to be, right? And it's being able to find your voice, because if there's any kind of doubt, right, beyond just kind of like, oh, I'm a little nervous, because who wouldn't be in that situation, right? Don't do it. And I hope that you can be safe with your partner or your partners to say, I'm really not good with this, even if it's just a little bit, and you can take the time, talk it over, maybe revisit it later, maybe not.
I think that ties into some lovely codependency issues that so many people have had. And I am included in that lovely codependency issue problem that obviously, as you know, stems from childhood trauma. That a lot of people, you got to dig that back and realize that you're people pleasing. You need to make other people accept you by not necessarily going with what you actually truly feel, just
Mhm.
to make others happy. That's codependency.
It's so hard, yeah, and we see a lot of that, happening. Like, it's always happened, but I think it's kind of become this like the new word of the day type of thing, right? Where you see a lot of people lately talking about codependency, and it's a good thing, right? Because it exists, and it's hard, recognizing again, I have value on my own. Right. And being able to flip it around too. If I am so busy pleasing everyone else, I'm going to get burnt out. And if I'm burnt out, I'm not even going to be able to do that. So let's focus on me, because I want to be my best person. I want to recognize my own value, and then I can be able to help others if I want to.
Right, exactly. You're preaching to the choir. So, what is your best tip for making the world a better place?
Oh, I like that question. Just be kind. It sounds so simple, but oh, did I lose you again?
I can still hear you.
Okay. I just see the video stopped.
The video stopped, but I can still hear you. As long as I can hear you, we're good.
Yeah, no, just be kind. Like, stop. I want to say stop the judgment, but you know what? Judgment, it's normal. We all make snap judgments, snap reactions. Like, that's human behavior, right? But being able to have that judgment, keep it to yourself, think about it, and just be kind, right? What's the thing that we learned in Bambi? If you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all.
Zip
Something
it.
along the lines. Yeah, yeah. Like, it's okay that you feel the way you do. It's okay that you're thinking what you're thinking. You don't necessarily have to share it with others if it's going to tear other people down.
Right. Right. Very much. I know I say that to my son a lot. I'm like, listen, buddy, it's okay to feel what you're feeling. It's okay to be mad, but it is not okay to hurt other people just because you're mad. Like you have to, if you need to go and yell it out somewhere in a space where you're not going to bother anyone, if you need to sit and breathe, if you need to go take your baseball bat and go whack a tree, I don't care. Just go let it out without hurting other people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And then, I mean, that kind of goes back into our CBT as well, right? Like, let's think about what is making you mad and how can you frame that a little differently to maybe be less angry, right? So if, I'm a failure, mommy hates me, like that's a terrible thing, but we'll just, pretend since we're talking about kids, right? How can we in our little child brain just calm down? Well, you know what? Mommy's mad and that makes me mad. And mommy loves me and I love mommy. So I'm still mad, but I'm going to be a little more calm about it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we do that a lot in my house.
Mm-hmm.
So, what makes you feel inspired in your life to be your best self?
What makes me inspired? You're asking some deep questions, girl. I wasn't ready for this. Oh my gosh.
Hey, that's why I threw you curveballs on purpose. I want to get you out of your box.
No doubt. What makes me inspired? Just other people. I think growing up, we kind of have our idols or whatever that we look at. That's usually like celebrity or pop culture based, whatever. And now I feel that my idols are real people, right? And that comes honestly from a lot of my clients and just seeing how average people have very similar problems to me and how they show great resilience and strength and how my clients, especially in diverse communities, embrace their diversity and really celebrate it and rejoice over it. And that I find is so motivating and inspiring.
I hear that, wearing my hair natural and learning
I
to
love
accept
it.
my culture and learning to accept who I am and not trying to chemically straighten it like I did for most of my life and try to fit into another category, but say, you know what, this is me, this is my hair, this is who I am, and this is okay. This is my culture and embracing my culture.
Yeah, and you honestly, you seem to smile brighter. Like this is so beautiful, really, really.
Oh, thank you. It's been a journey. It's been a big self-acceptance journey of accepting this is who I am. This is how my hair grows out of my head, and trying to force it to be something else is just it's fake. And I've got another episode for listeners. I've got another episode coming up that will speak to the owner of Bounce and why it's important to uh, get to know your hair and to accept your hair and how that matters into who you are and your self-acceptance of that sort of stuff. We'll get into that in another topic. That's not for today. That'll take us in a way too long of a different direction. But yeah, it's accepting who you are. And, Instagram has been a huge help for me for that of like, growing up, I didn't have people who wore their hair natural.
Well, like yeah, it's hard. You can't find someone to identify with, especially in the mainstream media. And again, that's getting better. It's still not great. It's still not. Ooh, my voice. It's not great. It's still not perfect. But yeah, and it's yeah, loving yourself. I love this journey you've gone on because it's hard and it's so meaningful and it's amazing.
I want everyone. That's why the podcast too. I want everyone to be their authentic selves. Step out of the shell that you've put yourself in because society has told you that's what you have to do, and just be you, your actual you, the real person that you are. And how do you get there? How do you let go of the mask you've put on to fit in society and just be your authentic, true self?
Oh yeah, it sounds so scary. I can pretty much guarantee you, if you are going to be your authentic self, you will be happier and things will go better and easier in your life, right? Because you're not trying to hide, not even from other people, but from yourself. That's a heavy burden to carry every day. I know.
Definitely. Definitely. So, what does it mean to you to be ridiculously human?
Oh, vulnerability. Absolutely. 100%. People are not nearly vulnerable enough. I think it's a stigma, right? Especially, men don't cry, right? Or for women, why are you still crying? It's just, and it's not even about tears, right? That can be it, but just, being able to say, I am hurting. I am scared. I am upset, whatever it is, being vulnerable is that's what it's to be ridiculously human. That is human nature that we've been trying to cover up for whatever reason, and it's been so harmful. So when people are vulnerable, I'm like, yes, this is what it is. It's okay to feel the feels and to be, again, authentic, right?
Definitely. So if you could do anything to improve mental health care in Canada or in the world, what would you do?
Okay, well, remember how we talked about how expensive therapy was? Yeah, I want some coverage for therapy. I would love for it to be free. I know that's a big ask, and I wouldn't even know where to start to put that in place. Um, your mental health is just as important as your physical health, 100%. And it is not recognized as such. And so people are suffering. And yes, we have free clinics you can go to, but those free clinics, you're not guaranteed to get the same therapist every time. You're not guaranteed to get like a day or time slot. Yes, there's sliding scale that's still inaccessible for some. And even then, there's only so much money, there's only so much time. And I've run into that myself where people are hurting. They could really use more sessions, they could really use more support, but the money's not there. And it sucks, right? They don't deserve that.
Definitely. I know that was I was very fortunate, very, very fortunate to find my therapist who is covered under OHIP. But without that, I I've wanted to do therapy for a few years now, but the cost was a huge, huge barrier to getting treatment.
It is. It sucks. I've been in therapy myself. I think every therapist should have their own therapist, right? Let's normalize it. Even if you feel that you're doing okay, a therapist is still a good person to talk to and just, have that safe space. But I wouldn't do it, or I wouldn't keep up with it because it's like $100 to $120 a session. That's a lot of money,
Yep.
you know?
Yep. And I find right now, even those the $100 or 120 a session, it's virtual. So then even more, like, you're not going to a location. You're like, but that's a lot to just have a Zoom call with somebody.
Yeah, it's so tough. And like, I don't know, like in my little brain, ideally, I'm like, if one day I open my own practice, I'm only going to charge this amount. And I get it for independent practitioners, right? You do have a lot of overhead, especially if you're new. You don't have that guarantee of steady income from clients, and you have your own family, you have your own bills to pay. I get it. It's just really unfortunate.
Mm-hmm. I truly feel it should be covered as a universal benefit. Just
Hmm.
like, well, then again, everything's kind of being dropped from the universal benefit. I remember at one time, vision was on your universal benefit and is no longer. And like dental would be a very important thing on universal benefit, but is not. I mean, I get it. Taxes would go up and everyone would complain, but this is why I'm grateful we live in Canada and we have, at least in Ontario, we have OHIP, Ontario Health Insurance Plan, because honestly, I think universal health care should be required for everybody. Everybody should have that. You shouldn't have to question whether or not you could pay your rent this month or go to the doctor.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. No, I know. I feel very fortunate to live here in Canada as well for that reason. I have a lot of American friends, and it's frustrating. I hear their stories for whatever it is, and it's like, well, I can't afford that bill, so I'm just not going to go, and I'm going to suffer through whatever's happening, and that's awful, right? We shouldn't
Mhm.
have to suffer like that.
It's terrible, terrible. You Americans listening, for real, push for universal health care. I know that everyone complains about, oh, your tax money, but for real, you shouldn't have to question whether or not you can pay your bills this month or see a doctor because you're sick. You should be able to just go to a doctor because you need to go to a doctor. Like,
Yeah, it's worth it. To me, yeah, our taxes are higher, and sure, it's a pain in the butt, but it's worth it because I know that if I'm not feeling well, like if I have strep throat, I can go to the doctor and I can get medication and I'm good to go. I don't have to suffer through strep throat on my own trying to whatever.
so what tips would you give for the listeners at home to help with their mental health and their well-being?
Ooh, okay. Schedules, routines, consistency. That stuff is so important. And I don't mean to say that you have to have every single hour of every single day planned for, but you know what? Maybe you have 15 minutes in the morning to just sit and take your coffee. Maybe twice a week you can go out for a 20-minute walk. Maybe, Friday night is family night, right? Have some consistency and routine in there and stick with it. One tool we didn't talk about before is behavioral activation. So it can be really daunting if you're, feeling depressed, for example, you have no motivation, you have no energy to do the things that you want to do. Behavioral activation is just making that plan, making that commitment, and essentially forcing yourself to do it, which doesn't sound very fun, but be kind. Set a timer, 10 minutes, do the thing that you want to do, whether it's going for a walk or doing the dishes. If after 10 minutes you're really not into it, you know what? Back to some mindful acceptance. It's okay. I'm going to take some breaths. I'm going to leave this for another time. Chances are, once you get started, though, you'll start feeling like, oh, yeah, this is fun. I forgot about this. Or maybe it wasn't fun, but gosh, look at this. I feel a little motivated. And you'll do it more than the 10 minutes, right? So it's just trying to, if you have a routine, stick to it, push through it, but still have that kindness and acceptance with it.
It's funny you say that, because that actually was something I started last year. Once the pandemic hit, like my morning schedule when my son was in school was like just rush, 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 get him out the door, get him to school, rush, 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 rush. And I'm generally a not morning person. I don't like mornings. I'll sleep as long as I possibly can, burrow under the blankets, don't want to get out. But last year, I got in the habit during the summer of getting up ahead of my child, because I found it very frustrating to try to drink my coffee when it's a constant yap, 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 mom, mom, mom. And I'm like, oh, like I am not a morning person. Please don't talk to me. Like, let me get a cup of coffee in my body. Let me get my bushy tail going. Like, give me a minute. But kids don't get that. So I started getting up at like 6:30 in the morning, which is an ungodly hour for me. Like, never would I have done this before. But I was getting up and I was using cannabis to treat my anxiety, because my anxiety was absolutely like through the roof, like not functioning anxiety, where like panic attacks and just absolutely horrible. So I was getting up in the morning and I was having a, let's call it a wake and bake with my cup of coffee. So I'd go out in the morning, and the sun would rise about 6-ish, well, about 6:45, 7 o'clock. So I'd get up at 6:30, hit my coffee maker, go get dressed. I'd start off my morning, get dressed, because if I'm going to go outside, obviously I have to put some clothes on. So get dressed, brush my teeth, maybe not do my hair, but at least get dressed and brush my teeth. By then my coffee maker was done, pour my coffee, go have my wake and bake, sit outside and just be alone. Then I started adding meditation to that in my morning. 10 minutes of meditation. I'm now up to 20 minutes, but I started at just 10 minutes of meditation in my morning, just sitting on my back stair with my cup of coffee and my joint and just taking in the morning, taking in that. And by the time I was done, my child was up and I was like, good morning. How are you? So nice to see you. What can I do for you? Instead of get away from me.
Absolutely.
And it helps.
Oh yeah, it does. It does. Absolutely. Yeah. It helps you center, helps you focus. And you approach that in a great way, right? Sometimes when people say, I want to make a change, they're like, okay, I am going to get dressed and make my coffee and meditate and do this. No. One thing at a time. Start with the coffee. And then maybe you can get dressed, and then 10 minutes of meditation, and then maybe 20, right? Take your time with it. It's okay to build that up.
I've now since moved up. Cold weather prevented outside. And I preferred to be outside because I could hear the birds and stuff like that. But cold weather really prevented that.
Yeah.
I fortunately got myself a sad light. I was like super duper lucky, found it at Value Village.
Okay.
For like $10. And I'm like, I don't even know what this is, but I'm going to buy it. And then I had to look it up on the internet. I'm like, what is this? And it's a sad light. Oh, cool. So my morning routine now is I get up and I do my coffee, and I've actually cut my cannabis out like entirely. I've been able to, through my therapy, working through my triggers, working through my trauma, I've actually been able to cut out my dependency on that to where I don't need it to get through my day. I did. I went through a big phase where I needed it regularly just to settle down the level of anxiety that was coursing through my veins, and the irritability and the angry and the rage spirals were terrible. They were really creating so much havoc in my home. I'm now at the point I don't need that anymore. I don't need that throughout my day. I start my day with my coffee and my meditation. I'm very proud of myself. Today hit 50 days of meditation in a
Wow.
row.
That's amazing. That's so fun.
So
And it sounds like
give
you've
myself a
been
pat on
doing
the
it.
back. I'm pretty proud of myself
Yes.
for that.
That's so good. Yeah, and like it's great to hear it because you can tell that it's making a difference, right? And it's again, this is why I like your podcast, right? This is working for you. It might not work for other people, but it's hope and it's motivation and it's giving ideas and sharing insights.
I mean, that's all we could do, right? Share our stories with other people and hope that they recognize themselves in the story and they can find something that might get even a little tip, even if one tip in the whole episode gives you some help. It's better than nothing.
Absolutely.
So, what is the best compliment you have ever received?
Uh, I again, like keeping in the therapy realm, right? From my clients, I go back to that first client I spoke about who wrote that beautiful handwritten letter. Uh, just basically saying thank you, that I was kind, that I was a good listener. Um, that really was a nice compliment to hear, again, just because of the nature of our relationship and how difficult it was just nice to hear that, like, oh, I was someone who could offer validation and empathy in a safe space who impacted someone. And then I also got to say I love when I work with youth because they think I'm really cool, right? I got face piercings, I got blue hair, I have some tattoos, and they're like, Miss Stephanie, you're so cool. I'm like, yeah, thanks. That makes me feel good. I don't care, it does.
Hey, that's okay. That's okay. We could take those things. I mean, my son, I lost my eyebrow piercing. I don't wear it anymore.
Oh no.
But my son, he'll comment. He's like, "Mom, how come you have so many piercings?" I'm like, "They make me happy." He's
Hmm.
like, "But do everyone else have piercings?" I'm like, "No, it's a personal thing. You do you. You do you, boo. Like,
You
you
do
do
you.
what you got to do."
Yeah, kids are sweet. I love when they ask about, like, different things like that. And that's the best answer, right? It's something that I like, not everyone else likes it. That's okay. You do you.
Right. So, for the listeners out there that might want to come and see you for therapy, how do they get a hold of you?
I don't know if I can talk about that. Can I directly promote myself? I'm not entirely sure. If you are looking for a therapist in general, though, the agency. See, I don't know if I can do this, Tova. I don't know if I can talk about where I work. Can I do
Well,
that?
hey, I'm okay with it. If you want to, if you want to direct people to come to your agency and come get help, more power to there. I know there are enough people in Windsor that don't even know where to start. They don't even know where to start looking.
Yeah, maybe I'll talk a little more about that then. Google is a wonderful tool. You just want to make sure that who you're seeing is credentialed, right? So there's a bunch of different agencies, there's a bunch of different private practices. If you are looking for, sliding scale or free services, you can look at family services. They have options there. Um, and maybe do your own research. Like, what do you want? Are you in need of a psychologist, for example? Are you looking to have a diagnosis to create a treatment plan to hopefully get on prescriptions? That's something you're going to need a psychologist or a psychiatrist for. Or are you just looking to do more talk therapy? Well, then you might want someone like me, who's a psychotherapist or maybe a social worker. And look what you're getting into as well, right? If you're looking for couples therapy, see someone who's a certified couples therapist, right? They might have more experience and training in that area than someone who doesn't. Is it important to you that you're working with someone who has a PhD? It shouldn't be, in my opinion, but if it is, that's okay, and so look at people's credentials. And it goes back to, again, being choosy with your therapists, right? If you want a female therapist, then search for that. Psychology Today, there's a lot of therapists who are on there. I think it's psychologytoday.com. So you can kind of find and sort to find someone to your preference who's nearby. And that's all I got.
That's a good start. I know I ended up on Psychology Today. It's one of my favorite sites. There's some excellent articles. There's some excellent information. There's lots of good therapists on there that you can search by the needs that you want. Someone who maybe has experience in narcissism, experience with, different childhood abuse, or things with depression, anxiety, dependency issues, addiction, that sort of thing. I definitely have found them to be useful in my searches.
Yeah, and the big thing again is credentials, right? Like you mentioned, like, substance use, right? There are people with specific credentials to treat that. For example, you could come to me. I'd probably refer you out, but if for whatever reason you wanted to keep, working with me about substance issues, I'd be very transparent. This isn't my thing. What else can we do to help find you, right? And someone who works for you, so look for those credentials so that you can have a better chance of getting a better match and getting the help that you need.
Awesome. So thank you so much, Steph. I
Thank
really enjoyed our talk today. This was very informative.
This is super fun. I know I'm dancing right now. This is a good way to start my day, let me say.
So to the listeners out there, if you like today's episode, please consider donating to the show at buymeacoffee.com/getinhealing. If you have any ideas for a future show, shoot me an email, shoot me a message at getinwe'regoinghealing@gmail.com. I hope that I have helped you find a little more healing in your day. Don't forget to be compassionate and kind to others and to yourself. And don't forget, the next time, until next time, love and light, fellow human being. I hope that you are loving yourself. I hope that you are kind to yourself. I hope that you are compassionate when you make a mistake. I hope that you forgive yourself for your mistakes. And I love you. Bye.